Do you think, so if you once you have dishes, everybody who's had a modern kitchen knows that dishes can get mixed up. Is this spoon used for milk, dairy, or for meat, and so on? So a lot of issues with dishes. Good. What else? What comes to your mind? Anything else about kosher?
Vegetable.
Good. Yeah.
I will say when I started keeping kosher, personally, my biggest struggle was remembering not to mix dairy and chicken.
Yeah.
That was not intuitive. So
There's
rules about halal and basar.
Right, exactly. The mixing of meat and milk is a very, very unique halacha. A lot of people associate that with just no cheeseburgers, right? You can't have cheese, milk, and meat, and that's even if the meat is kosher and the cheese is kosher.
But when you get the cheese like this, it's okay.
Nah, smile is all right. Smile is good with all kinds. Good. Right, so even if you have the products are totally kosher with the best supervision and the best certificate, you bring them home, you mix them together, you're in trouble. Very good. Now, Stephen said something fascinating. Vegetables?
Yes,
What could be not kosher about a vegetable?
we will make sure there's no bugs.
There's no bugs. Yeah, we don't eat. We're not allowed to eat bugs, right?
The main thing is the bugs.
Okay.
Right?
So this is a special part of kosher that for thousands of years, Jews didn't have to worry about too much because they didn't live in the land of Israel. There's certain mitzvot of produce of the land of Israel. In the land of Israel, you have to give off tithes to the Kohanim, to the Leviim. We have to learn how is that done today. Now that we're back in the land of Israel, we don't really have a temple service. Why should the Kohanim get any special produce? And the Levites are not singing. All right, they give us a bracha, the Kohanim. But that's not too hard a job. And so we have to understand how these laws apply today because we're living in the land of Israel. And so we have to think about those areas of kashrut, not only meat or fish and everything we're talking about now, but the fruits and the vegetables which we eat. There's such a thing as non-kosher fruits and vegetables, not only because they have little bugs in them, even they're bug-free. An apple, most apples don't have a worm inside. Although there is such this concept of the apple and the worm, right? But a fruit which is totally clean of bugs, you could have a non-kosher apple. It's not kosher until you separate the tithes, and of course there's a whole cycle in the land of Israel. What did we just finish? The year that we just finished? Shemitah year. So there's a cycle of a 7-year cycle in the land of Israel, which we have to talk about as well, and how that affects the produce that we eat. Very good. What else?
Yesterday I don't drink coffee.
Okay.
But I was invited to go to cafeteria.
Okay.
And, fantastic.
Okay.
All over the world.
Yeah.
Have coffee. It's how you behave the coffee that's prepared for non-Jews.
Good. There's also rules, which over the course of the centuries got added. It's not from the Torah law, but the rabbis wanted to make sure that we don't assimilate, that we don't marry out of the faith, and food is something which brings people together. And so they added restrictions on eating food cooked by a non-Jew. So it's a good question. How does that apply? What are the parameters of that? If a non-Jew cooks up some food like coffee for you, they make the coffee for you. Can you have food that's cooked by a non-Jew? What are the rules? Those are rabbinic rules that also are part of the kashrut laws. Very good. What else?
What's about when we don't keep the order by eating? So suppose I start eating with meat, and directly after this I'm going to eat fish.
That actually is allowed, but you're right, there are rules about exactly mixing of meat and milk, not only not to have a cheeseburger, but also to wait in between certain foods. Fish, is interesting also. Is some people don't have fish together with milk.
Does it make it dry?
Not at all. Not at all. No. This is a very interesting halacha. But we'll have to cover that as well. Yes, another idea about kashrut. Yeah.
Can you buy like vegetables from Arabs?
Good question. Good question. You're saying you're in the land of Israel, but it doesn't belong to a Jew. So what's the law of that? It's a good question. There's also mitzvot, believe it or not, there's kashrut of bread. What makes bread, what could make bread not kosher?
Egg from the chickens?
Well, yeah, eggs from the chicken. I assume most chickens are kosher. Most eggs are kosher around the world. We assume that they're healthy, and it's really, you could theoretically have problems with the eggs, but that's not the biggest problem with bread. There's other problems with bread. What else could make a bread not kosher?
When we make bread, we need to take out the dough.
Good. There's a mitzvah,
The bread must be good.
even outside the land of Israel, that you have to give a section of the bread to the Kohen. And if not, the bread is not kosher, or that's the question. What are the rules of, it's called challah, believe it or not. Challah is not just the bread that we eat on Shabbat. Challah is actually the name of a gift to the Kohen that we have to give, and today we're not allowed to eat it, but we have to separate it. Very good. And then, of course, once you have everything kosher, the animal comes from the right animal, and you've slaughtered it properly, and you've taken out the parts which you're not allowed to eat, the forbidden blood and the fats and all the different kinds of things, and you didn't mix it with milk. Okay, and you're ready to partake of your feast. And then you still have to make a bracha, right? You have to make a blessing before the food, a blessing after the food. And so there's a lot of till you finally can. This cake that I brought in today, it's kosher, okay? Supervised by Rabbi. Just make a bracha, borei minei mizonot, because it's made with wheat flour. That's the proper bracha. You have to know the proper bracha, right? There's laws of blessings which we're going to study. B'ezrat Hashem. All that and more in the coming month before we get to Purim. But today is Rosh Chodesh Shvat. Rosh Chodesh Adar, we're already going to move on to the laws of Purim. Prepare for Purim and then prepare for Pesach. So by Rosh Chodesh Adar, we have to be finished. So precisely a month. So let's get started, okay? Nobody wants the cake. Nobody wants to eat. Help yourself. It's for you. Okay. Yes, Pinchas.
Some rabbi thinks Baghdad standard is too high. The food is too expensive. So in order to more people keep kosher standard, the level, many standard kosher standard level.
Excellent, good point. We have to, study the laws of kosher, understand them, what the Torah demands of us, but we can't think about it in a vacuum. There's other considerations which impact. What's a vacuum in Chinese? I see a blank stare. Vacuum. You can't only talk about the laws of. There's other things which impact. Like you said, the more you're strict, sometimes it's expensive. It's going to make the price higher, and then fewer people will be able to afford kosher, and then they won't keep kosher because of the price. And so you're going to get very strict about the laws of kosher, but less people will be keeping them. Maybe it's a problem of loving your neighbor like yourself. And then in the land of Israel, we mentioned the issue of, sure, you're keeping the laws of kosher, but what about giving the Arabs more livelihood and almost cutting the Jews out of the market? And then we have larger political considerations, geopolitical, not Jew political, but geopolitical considerations. There's so many things that kashrut cannot be taken alone. it impacts a lot of things. So, and yeah, there are different standards, as we're going to see. Like everything in halacha, there's machloket between rabbis on this issue and that issue. And when you maneuver, when you decide to be strict here, sometimes right, the blanket is only so large. If you pull it to one side of the bed, the other person's going to be left in the cold. And so there's larger, you could say even meta halachic considerations, which impact how we keep kosher. Sure, true. And it's different when you're living in Israel. If you're living in Chutz La'aretz, there's different considerations. There, people, maybe you want to build the walls higher, like we mentioned, to separate yourself off from the non-Jews. We don't want assimilation. Whereas here, maybe we want to lower down the walls because we want the Jewish people to be eating in each other's houses, to be fostering peace among the Jews. If they're primarily Jews, we want everybody to be able to share together in happy times, and even if you're at work, right? If you're working among the non-Jews, you don't want to be having lunch with them, and you don't want to be fraternizing with them and having the parties. And the religious Jew, the Jew in general, should be keeping his distance. But here we have a lot of Jews working together, and we want them to be at peace with each other and influencing each other towards being more Jewish, and so that can impact how you apply the halacha in different situations. Very good, very good. All right. So after that introduction, are you ready to get started? So I like Rav Melamed's approach, where he divides the topics. In general, we can talk about the laws of agriculture, vegetables and fruit, the laws which are associated primarily with the land of Israel, as one topic, and then meat and slaughtering meat, different types of kosher animals and non-kosher animals, and the mixing of meat and milk. Those are the two basic topics of basically agricultural laws, laws of produce from that grow in the ground, and which are primarily about the land of Israel. And then the laws of meat and its products, and meat and fish and animal products. So usually you start with the latter. I'm going to start with the former because we're in the land of Israel. And not only that, Tu B'Shvat is coming, and Tu B'Shvat we know is the new year for the trees. So it's all about the vegetables and the fruit of the land of Israel. And we celebrate with eating fruit on Tu B'Shvat. It's a custom, a Kabbalistic custom to eat a lot of fruits on Tu B'Shvat. And so we're going to start with that topic. Hopefully we'll move on and be able to cover it all, although it's quite a lot. I don't think, we're just giving a survey. Of course, we needed an entire course. Like last year, we did a course in which we covered, I'd say 3/4 of the 2 books. We didn't actually finish, because we changed up the system a little bit in the middle, but we had a more in-depth course covering all the laws of kashrut. You were here, Michael Arya, right?
Yes, I remember.
You remember, very good. So you bring your notes, and if I say something different, you'll correct me. But everybody else was not here, I think, when we did the kashrut course, right?
No.
Just you, Michael. Okay, all right. Maybe if you're watching on YouTube, some of them were here. Ravid, you might have been here for some of it, the kashrut class.
He was just last week.
But it's always good to review, right? And this is going to be a quick survey, so we're pretty much very quickly gonna mention the different topics. Pinchas had a good point. For the layman, pretty much when you see the label, the rabbi had to take care of all these topics. Okay, as we're going to make a list now of a lot of topics, which we're briefly just going to speak about them, so you know what goes into having a kosher piece of cake in the end of the day. Because cake, where does it come from? What are the ingredients of a cake?
Flour.
Flour, that grows from the ground, right? Sugar grows from the ground. And what else?
Maybe some
Milk.
Milk, maybe. Okay, so then you're already getting into dairy products, which is another topic.
Maybe something like
Eggs.
Like
Well, cocoa. Cocoa grows on a tree. Cocoa bean, isn't that a tree?
Why we don't say that's why we eat chocolate?
It's a good question. Some rabbis say you should. Some rabbis make a bar prates when you eat the chocolate. Chocolate is from bean tree. It's a tree. The custom is to not. The custom is to say shahakol. That's the kind of thing. Because you can't see it. It doesn't look like the way it looks on the tree. Cocoa. But yeah, so cake. It's primarily the things that we're going to talk about now. Okay, so coffee as well, right? Tea leaves, right? So it comes from a tree. Boker Tov. Nobody new here. I mean, everybody's new, fresh. It's Rosh Chodesh. Everybody's renewed. But the new student you were looking for is not here.
Are you all aware? What I'm aware of?
Mm.
You're the best Rabbi in town.
He's so humble on top of it. On top of everything, he's so humble. It's unbelievable. Okay, you ready? Let's begin. Law number one. You've never heard of before, maybe. It's called Chadash. What does Chadash mean? New. Starting with a new law. The Torah says, these are psukim in the Torah. Again, we don't have time to look everything up and to show you that would be for an in-depth course. But I'm just going to tell you outside. And you'll take notes and you'll have a concept. Chadash means the Torah says there's a cycle of the year. And in the times of the temple, there was a special sacrifice on Pesach, which was brought from the new wheat. The wheat from the new crop, right? The way nowadays there's summer wheat and winter wheat, but usually what we're talking about is winter wheat. Wheat is grown over the winter. You plant it in the fall. All winter it rains. This is the cycle in the land of Israel and the Mediterranean and the northern hemisphere. And then in the springtime, it grows, and all through the winter it grows, and then it gets ripe, and you harvest it around Pesach time. And the Torah says you bring a korban, bring a sacrifice from the new wheat, and only then can you enjoy the produce of the new wheat. So wheat has a date on it. This is a unique halacha, and you're not allowed to partake of the new wheat, chadash, until this korban is brought. Nowadays we don't have the korban, we don't have a temple, but we do have the date. The date is the second day of Pesach. The first day of Pesach is Tet Vav Be Nisan. You're supposed to bring the korban. No, I was right the first time. It's the second day of Pesach. After the first day of Pesach is the 15th. So the 16th of Nisan, there's the special korban. And now we don't have a korban. That is when all of the wheat becomes kosher. Before that, the wheat is not kosher. So flour, the cake we're eating, it comes from flour. You're not allowed to have the cakes and cookies and bread made from the wheat of the new crop after the springtime comes until the 16th of Nisan is finished. Till after the 16th of Nisan. 16th of Nisan, then it's kosher. Now, in the time of the temple, there was a korban. Nowadays, we have to wait until that date has passed. So that's pretty much the law of Chadash, that there's such a thing as prohibited wheat and permitted wheat. The new wheat is prohibited until this date has passed. You know what the biggest problem is? Maybe sometimes you have beer. What do you use to make beer?
Yeast.
Usually not yeast. Usually hops. Hops. What are hops? Hops are made from barley, if I'm not mistaken. It's a part of barley, right? So it's part of any grain. Any grain, you have there's rules of chadash. In any case, you have to make sure that up until Pesach time, usually it's during the winter. It could be that they quickly harvested the wheat or the barley and they made food with it. That's not kosher until after the 16th of Nisan. Now that's the law. It applies in the entire world. But the custom has been for a good few thousand years now, for some reason, nobody's quite sure why, the custom has been that outside the land of Israel, Jewish communities don't practice this. They're not careful about the law of Chadash. Some rabbis, because that's the custom, we have to justify it somehow. We can't say that all the Jewish people were sinners. So they came up with all sorts of reasons. They say, well, this law only applies in the land of Israel, in which there's no really great source for that. But that's the custom. It's a custom in all over the world, in America, in Europe, is that they were not careful about eating only from the wheat, which is, what's the opposite of Chadash? Yashan. Right, or if you pronounce Yashan. Chadash and Yashan. This is the Hebrew words for new and old. Old. Old Yashan means old. So if you pronounce it like an Ashkenazi, so Yashan. Now that's a Zaken and Tzair, young and old. But new and versus old is Chadash versus Yashan. So you will find that there are some people that are Machmir. You go to an American community, there may be a bakery, a Jewish bakery, and then there's a special Jewish bakery that says, we sell only Yashan. We're careful that we take the wheat that has been past the 16th of Nisan. We don't have anything. It's during the winter time. You have to make sure that you don't have the new wheat. In the summertime, most of the wheat that's been grown, it went past that expiry date of the 16th of Nisan. So in the summertime, it's less of a problem. But in the wintertime, there are many bakeries that have special signs, kosher certification, that they make their products only with Yashan, not Chadash. But in Israel, there's no argument. Everybody agrees. Everything has to be supervised, that it comes from wheat that was grown and passed over the date of 16th of Nisan. So, it's a mitzvah in the Torah. You should know about it, okay? That's the law of Chadash. Law number 1, Chadash and Chutz La'aretz. The custom is to be lenient about it. There's some people that are Machmir, and it's a good idea. You might have to be careful about it. Now there's a lot of import and export. So import into the land of Israel, you can bring in some products which are kosher, there's supervised kosher from America, for example. But in Israel, they'll say, hey, that's not kosher yet. You have to wait until after the 16th of Nisan, right? Pesach time, for it to be kosher. Because the custom in America is to be lenient about Chadash, but in the land of Israel, there's no custom like that. The strict letter of the law is it has to be Yashan, has to be only old, and everything becomes Yashan immediately on the 16th of Nisan. After the 16th, everything's permitted. But before that, you've got a problem if you're not careful. You have to wait. You have to wait and use the older wheat until the 16th of Nisan. That was law number 1. Ready? Okay, law number 2. This one you might have heard of. It's called Orla. Orla has 2 meanings. Don't confuse the 2.
Okay.
All right? What's the other meaning of Orla, which I'm not going to talk about now? The foreskin. You cut off, in circumcision, you cut off the foreskin. That foreskin that you cut off is called Orla. We're not talking about that. It's a section which is prohibited, which has to be set aside. So when it comes to fruit and vegetables, there's something called orla as well. Orla has nothing to do with the foreskin. It has to do with the fruit of the first 3 years. A brand new sapling is planted in the ground. Its produce is prohibited for 3 years. And there's a second mitzvah, which is connected, and that is called Revai. Revai is the word arba in it, the 4th year. Produce of the 4th year is also forbidden, but you're allowed to make it kosher by redeeming it. You can redeem the holiness out of the 4th year's produce, and so you can eat it once you do this ceremony of removing the holiness onto, usually it's done onto money. We take the holiness from the 4th year's fruit onto money, and then you can have it. But these are 2 mitzvot, orla and revai. Orla and revai. Revai comes from the word arba. So there's an ayin in there. Arba. It's written with aleph, resh, bet, ayin. So here, revai is resh, bet, ayin, yud. Orla and revai. Also, psukim in the Torah, it says that, this is, by the way, the first time we noticed that it's connected to calendars, to timing. Both of these mitzvot are connected to timing. Chadash is connected to a calendar date. Orla and Revai are connected to primarily each tree has its own cycle of 3 years. It's a subjective timing. Now, we're going to talk about Tu B'Shvat. Actually, Tu B'Shvat is connected to the mitzvah of Orla and Revai also. Even though each tree has its own subjective timer, right? Each tree is planted with a countdown timer of 3 years and 4 years. The way we count the years is connected to Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat is known as the new year for the trees. And so if you plant a tree and you're counting its years, year 1, year 2, year 3, it ends at Tu B'Shvat. It doesn't end precisely, 12 months after it was planted is year 1, another 12 months after it's planted is year 2, another 12 months is year 3, another 12 months is year 4. Doesn't work like that. The end of the year, most people assume it applies to the end of the year, not the beginning of the year. Beginning of the year is Rosh Hashanah. We talked about it regarding Shemitah. A lot of people were getting their trees planted before Rosh Hashanah because of the beginning time. It depends on whether you're in this year or that year. We'll talk about it later. But the ending time for that 3rd year or that 4th year is going to be on Tu B'Shvat, not exactly 12 months after it was planted.
Is Tu B'Shvat also connected to Upsharim, or
let's
put a pin in that?
Let's ask your question better.
Okay.
The custom of Orla, that you're not allowed to partake from the fruit of the tree for 3 years, might be an anchor for this custom that you don't cut a children's hair for 3 years.
Okay.
So like his hair is like Orla, right? You're not allowed to cut his hair for 3 years. The concept of something being, invalid or having a change after 3 years is, I believe, the source for this custom. Some people have, not every community has that. And that's only a custom, it's not a law, that you don't cut a little boy's hair for 3 years. When you do it, it doesn't have to be, it could be on his birthday after 3 years.
Okay.
Usually it's not specifically Tu B'Shvat, it's not connected to Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat's for trees. But the 3 years for every boy, usually it's for his birthday. Some people push it off till Lag BaOmer. Lag BaOmer is a time when people cut hair. It's associated with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So you're not wrong about the Orla connection. The 3 years is perhaps in that. Okay? So pretty much you have to wait until Tu B'Shvat of the 3rd year, or depending on when you plant. Okay, that's law number 2. Any questions about that? Yes.
Regarding the imports goods, how does this person supervise the kosher of the food only after 16 of Nisan is become kosher? How does this thing work?
The rabbis have to speak to the manufacturer and ask them, which wheat did you use? Where did it come from? And when was it grown? And they have to know what the product, what the raw materials are coming from. Yeah, the rabbis have to make sure. Now, Orla is interesting. Orla applies in the land of Israel as well as outside the land of Israel, but there is one change, and that is that the rabbi said if there's suffix, if there's doubt about Orla, then you can be lenient outside the land of Israel. In Israel, we have to be more stringent, and that makes a big difference because most fruit, when you go to the supermarket, you don't know the tree in which it grew. Did it come from a 3rd year, or the 2nd year, or the 4th year, or the 5th year? An apple's an apple. A peach is a peach. And so in Chutz La'aretz, it's a doubt. Doubt in Chutz La'aretz is allowed when it comes to the laws of Orla and the Taravai. In the land of Israel, doubt is prohibited. So you actually have to have a lot more supervision. Believe it or not, there's a department in the Rabbanut, kosher division, and they pretty much know about each and every tree planted in the land of Israel, which types of fruits have new crops, new orchards of peaches, new orchards of nectarines. And they're going to have special supervision to make sure they don't go to market before the 3rd year is finished. It's prohibited. Sometimes people ask me, can you buy produce from an Arab? And this is the stickiest part, the hardest part about buying produce from Arabs, is that you don't know where they came from. It could be that the Arabs have planted young trees, and the fruit is Orla. Even if it belongs to a non-Jew, it's still forbidden for the first 3 years. It's not mine. Somebody's ringing. I think it might be yours, Binyamin. So we have to put them on silent, okay? In any case, it could be that the produce they're selling actually came from a Jewish farmer also. But the fact that they're the sellers doesn't mean that necessarily it's their produce. But the biggest issue is you have to know which fruit have a danger of being Orla. Most fruit comes from trees which are old. And so usually we follow the majority. Majority of fruit are from fruit trees which live for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Fruit trees can give fruit for a long time. It's very rare that you have fruit from the first 3 years. Most fruit trees don't bear fruit for the first 3 years. So really the Torah's law is not so difficult to keep. But the law is we can follow the majority as long as there's no significant minority. What's a significant minority? There's a debate among some poskim say, as long as it's 51%, you can old fruit that's past the 3rd year, it's fine. That's very easy. Almost always you have 51%. Some rabbis are more stringent. They say it has to be, even if it's 80% fruit that's not Orla. If there's 20%, it's forbidden. Some people say no. If it's 10%, it's forbidden. Some people say even if there's 3% of new fruit in the market, you buy, for example, plums. Plums, there was a farmer, they decided to plant plums this year or for the last year. If there's a lot of farmers that planted plums, even if it's 3%, then that's considered to be a significant minority, and that's why we have supervision, because most fruits, even though the majority of the fruits are from the older trees, we have to be careful about it. So you have to have supervision. The rabbis have to know about Orla and Revai. That's the halacha number 2 and 3, really. Chadash, Orla, and Revai. Orla and Revai are connected, but the fruit of the 4th year is sort of like part of the same system as the 3 years, and then the 4th year can be redeemed. So we have to do that. Yes?
Watermelon.
Watermelon. So watermelon is not a tree. It's a vegetable. This is really only vegetables. You have a new plant every time you plant them.
Yeah.
You plant them fresh. So watermelon doesn't have the laws of Orla regarding to its fruit. Okay, ready for number 3?
Yeah.
Halacha number 3. Oh, Chaim's back. We can do halacha number 3. We're ready to halacha. Halacha number 3 is called kilayim.
How?
Kilayim. Kilayim, forbidden mixtures. Kilayim, forbidden mixtures. Now here, we have to, it's quite a widespread mitzvah. The mitzvah applies not only to things in the ground, but it also applies to animals, and it also applies, believe it or not, to clothing. Kilayim is a large category of forbidden mixtures. Of course, right now, we're not talking about the laws of forbidden mixtures in your clothing. We know about that. What's it called? Shatnez, right? The Torah says you're not allowed to have kilayim in your clothes, and it gives it a special name. Kilayim in your clothes. What's forbidden mixtures of? Wool and linen. That's right, linen. It's a special type of material that's made from flax. Pishtan. This in last week's parsha, right? Which makkah? No. Which plague? I think it's the 7th. The barad. Oh, so it says that the hail did not destroy everything. The chita and the kusemet, that's the wheat, and the spelt, we call it kusmin nowadays. They were not damaged because they were still young. They were still they were flexible. They could bend, and even though the hail hit them, they didn't break off. They didn't break. But the other pishtan, one of them was this flax stalks. They were destroyed by the hailstones. Okay, and then the later mark of the arbe, the locust that's in this week's parsha, they ate up everything. So anyways, pishtan is a type of material made from we call it linen. Very expensive. Most clothing that we wear is cotton. And if it's wool, if you want to be warm, so cotton and wool. But linen is used in some very expensive, usually it's expensive clothing, some dresses, some suits, some linings are made with linen, but it's not that expensive. So you have to be sure that your clothes don't have wool and linen in them. That's the law that we're not going to talk about. You don't eat your clothing, usually. We're talking about the kosher laws. So what that leaves us with is 3 other types of kilayim. Kilayim of the clothes we talked about. And then there's the kilayim of the animals. We're not going to talk about that too much either. That's for farmers. You're not allowed to breed animals of different types. And also you're not allowed to lead a plow. The animals used to be the John Deere, the tractors of the day. Right? So you're not allowed to lead a team which is made up of 2 different types of animals. We're not going to talk about that either. So kilayim of animals, kilayim of clothes, we're not going to talk about. What does that leave us? It leaves us with kilayim of trees and seeds. Now within trees, there's 2 types of trees. The most severe type of tree issue is grapes, grapevines. Grapevines, a vineyard, that's the most severe laws of kilayim. And if you mix in anything else up with a grapevine, it becomes prohibited to eat. You even have to destroy it. It's you're not allowed to have any benefit from it. Not only you're allowed to eat from it, you're not allowed to sell it. So that's kilayim, kilei hakerem, kilei hakerem. Hakerem is a vineyard. Kilei hakerem. That's one type of trees, kilayim. The second type of tree kilayim, and that's regarding, I said, planting in a vineyard, planting other types in a vineyard. There's another type of kilei ilan trees, and that is grafting trees of different types. You can't take a branch of a lemon tree, put it onto an orange tree, or put it inside a pomegranate tree. Grafting two different types. That's prohibited only with grafting. It's not about planting within a vineyard. It's just grafting. That's kilayim of trees. Believe it or not, there's a branch of the kashrut division in the Rabbanut, which, the Rabbanut division doesn't work so well, but there's another kashrut organization which says only buy, if you want to plant trees in your garden, you want to buy a peach tree, only buy in these specific nurseries, because we have gone around and made sure that in the nurseries they didn't graft different types. Farmers do that because it makes the tree stronger, it makes the fruit juicier sometimes. But kilayim that's kilei ilan. Ilan is a biblical word for trees. We say etz and ilan. Ilan is another word for etz. So kilei ilan. And the final type, which is the most practical type, is called kilei zra'im. Zra'im are seeds. Kilei zra'im. Kilei zra'im, seeds, you're not allowed to plant seeds together of various types. I already told you that the worst is when you put other types together with a grapevine. But even if it's not a grapevine, and if you plant a cucumber together with wheat, it's a problem. Plant a cucumber together with a tomato, it's a problem. There has to be a distance between them. So there's forbidden mixtures in the vineyard. There's also forbidden in the field. Okay, kilei zra'im. So I think we covered all 5 types, right? Everybody who wants to review them for us? What are the 5 types we spoke about? First one is clothing. We're not going to talk about, right? Keshatnez, right?
Lean seeds.
What do you mean?
Lean.
Lean? What do you mean lean seeds? Linen, yes. Linen, yeah.
Is you can use in food.
Right, people eat flax seeds. Yeah, that's fine. That's delicious, yeah. It's good for your digestion, they say. It cleans out your...
I will do.
Good, enjoy. It has to be kosher supervision, right? Because there's other laws. We're going to see all the laws of produce that needs kosher supervision, at least in Israel, right? But flax is kosher. Just don't put it in your clothing with your wool. Don't make linen out of it. And okay, so the first type we said was clothing. Second type we said is animals, husbandry, and also plowing together with, or using 2 animals together of different types. And then we went towards the plant kingdom, and we said there's kilei hakerem, vineyard, kilei ilan, grafting trees, and kilei zra'im. So if you have a garden, you should make sure to separate your different types of vegetables and plants. For most plants, all you have to do is a tefach and a half. It's about 12 centimeters apart from each other. Of course, there's a lot of details. We're not going to go into all of them. I'm giving you a survey. So far, so good?
I want to ask
Yes.
Regarding the Kila HaKayim.
Kil'ei hakerem, yes.
Hakerem.
Yeah, with an R.
Yeah, this is it's not allowed to mix grapes and other type of.
That's right.
different
It's a
type of
special, more severe type of kil'ei zra'im, of seeds, of mixing seeds, planting seeds together. In a vineyard, they're even worse. There's more severe laws about mixing in other plants into a vineyard.
But how does this differ from the Kila Zeraim? It's a seed also.
The difference is the produce becomes forbidden for any benefit, and I think the punishment is even more severe. And the rules of what how close you can be, and how far you have to be to separate the different species are different. That's how it's different. It's the same concept of mixing different types, but the type called grapevine is worse than any of the other type of mixing. Okay? Okay?
This is especially for grapes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. Grapes have a place of prominence in the Jewish tradition, like in most traditions, because you make wine from it. It was used in the temple, right? There were sacrifices made from wine. Wine, we use it for kiddush and havdalah, and for a lot of rituals. The Torah gives special attention and a special prohibition of and there's certain rules, more stringent rules about the mixing of seeds when one of the seeds is a grape seed, grapes. Okay.
Yes.
Good. So what are we up to now? If kilayim was considered, this whole topic is one category. We divided it into 5, but one category. So we're up to 4 now, right? Orla, what did we say? Chadash, Orla, kilayim, and now we're up to gifts to the poor. Number 4 is gifts to the poor. Gifts to the poor. There's 5 types of gifts to the poor. Now we all know that there's a mitzvah called tzedakah, right? You have to give tzedakah. Usually it's money. Help a poor person. Sometimes you can buy him lunch. It could be food, right? But the Torah, since the Torah was written for a society which was primarily agricultural, the Torah specifically says you have to give gifts in kind to the poor. That means from the major product of society, which is your produce, which grows in the ground. You have to give 5 types of gifts to poor people. I'm not talking about Kohanim and Levim. That'll be the next chapter. That's the next one. Category 4 is gifts to the poor, and in gifts to the poor, there's 5 types. This category has 5 laws, 5 different types of gifts to the poor from your field, from your produce in the field. Okay? So far, so good? It's a lot of material at once. But you're with me? Anybody needs a break, take a drink, have a piece of cake. Don't worry, it doesn't have any of the... It's clean from all of these issues that we're raising. The gifts to the poor have been given, and it's not, the wheat was not mixed with any kind of other produce, and yeah.
You give you the 10% of the corner?
You said 2 things. You said a corner and 10%. Those are 2 separate mitzvot. Let's cover them now inside. We'll see that. The gifts to the poor, they do include a 10%, but that let's do it organized. Before we get to the 10%, that'll just confuse you. First one is the corner of the field, though. Corner of the field. If you go have a field, you have to leave off the corner so that the poor people can come and harvest the produce from the corner. Even a corner of a tree, if you have an orchard. So leave off a corner. I have a trick question for you. Let's see who really pays attention. Pinchas, Yisrael. what is the measurement? How much is called the corner of the field that you have to leave for the poor people? I want to say, raise your hands. Raise your hand. Who knows the answer to this question? According to the Torah law, how big, what's the measurement of that corner that you have to leave? The owner of the field cannot harvest it. He has to leave it for the poor people. You know the answer? You don't know the answer? You do know the answer, and you say you know the answer, and you think you know the answer. Who else? Everybody should know the answer to this question. I'm waiting. Think about it. What is the measurement that is defined that you have to give as the corner of the field that you leave for the poor people? How big does that corner have to be? It's big, small. The one thing I will say is that it's not 10%. Like you put together, that those two separate mitzvot. The mitzvah of peah. What is the measurement of peah? Peah, that's the corner. Peah means corner. By the way, there's another type of peah. The corner of your hair. Corner of your head hair. Corner of your head hair is usually near the ear, and that we're not allowed to cut off also. But that's not what we're talking about now. We're talking about agricultural laws, right? Peah, the corner of the field. By the way, there's another meaning of peah in modern Hebrew. It means a wig. Where some women cover their hair, it's a mitzvah for married women to cover their hair. Some of them wear a hat, some of them wear a kerchief, a scarf. Some of them put on a wig. In modern Hebrew, a wig is called a peah. Same word. Pei, aleph, hey. But we're not talking about that either. We're talking about the pei of the field. I want the answer to my question. Everybody in this room should know the answer to this question. What is the measurement of the corner of the field? Eitan, tell us.
It's like you make a turn, but you're not allowed to go back, right?
Wrong. Michal Aryeh, do you think you know the answer?
It's in the prayer, right?
It is in the prayers. That's why I want everybody to know. Everybody should be saying this every morning. So that's why you should know. But you forget? Oh no!
I forgot to say, but I forgot what it was because remember, like.
What's the measurement?
One for the, I know, but
Yeah. What do you say, Chaim?
I can't remember.
You can't remember. Ravid.
Not me, I know.
Oh. So disappointed. I'm so disappointed.
Where is it in the prayer?
Where is it in the prayer?
precepts.
No. What do you mean precepts? What do you
There's
mean?
the precept you have to keep Torah and there's discount for everything. Being to the sick.
What's that called? The section in the prayers, there's a section every day we make a bracha on learning Torah. I actually said a couple of months ago, people, maybe you weren't here, do not enter this classroom in the morning unless you have said at least blessings on the Torah. We're not studying math here. We're not studying geology or geography. We have to make a bracha before we learn Torah. We're doing a mitzvah. We have to appreciate it. This is a gift from God. And we should be aware that we're doing a holy mitzvah by learning this Torah. After we make the bracha on the Torah, just like when you make a bracha on an apple, what do you have to do? You have to take a bite of the apple. So when you're making a bracha on the Torah, what do you have to do? You have to learn Torah right afterwards. So we do in our prayer service. Every morning, it's part of the morning blessings. We make a bracha on the Torah in the right way. We learn a little Torah. And you know what Torah we learn? 3 passages. The first passage is? Nope. After the blessing on the Torah, the first passage is? That's right. The Kohanim blessing. We say, Yivrecha Chashem Yishmerecha, Ya'er Hashem Panav Elecha V'chuneka, Yisa Hashem Panav Elecha V'yasem Lecha Shalom. Perhaps the 3 most beautiful psukim in the Torah. Blessing of the Kohanim that God gives us through the Kohanim. That's the first passage we study from the actual Torah. Second passage we study is from the Mishnah, right? The Talmud is the larger term. It's specifically a Mishnah. It's the first Mishnah in the book Masechet Peah. Peah. This is what we're talking about, the mitzvah of Peah. And what does the first Mishnah in Peah say? Elu dvarim. These are things
There's no prescription.
She'ein lahem shi'ur. There's no prescribed measurement. That's the correct answer. And the first one in the list is hape'ah. Hape'ah v'habikurim v'harayon. There's a list of 5 things which do not have a prescribed measurement in the Torah. That's the answer. That's what you meant to say. Yeah. That's why there is no measurement. I got you guys. I got you. But I didn't want to. I was hoping you'd get it yourself. You say it every morning. These are the things that have no measurement. Peah has no measurement. The corner could be a large corner, could be small corner, could be big corner, could be, as large as you want. But it has to be a corner of the field.
But I was thinking about this.
Yeah.
I know there's something.
You say it every day. You say it every day, but we have to understand the Torah that we learn, make the bracha, and then read Torah that you understand. Okay, getting back. So we're back to the first of the 5 mitzvot of giving to the poor in kind. Okay? Peah is number 1. Number 2, here we go. This is what Eitan was thinking of. And that is called shichecha. What's lishkoach? Shachachti. I knew it, but I forgot. Shechecha means forget. To forget. So if you're harvesting your wheat or your barley, whatever it is, and you're going through the row and you're cutting down the stalks, you're making bundles, and you forget a bundle, you didn't pick it up, put it on your track or your wagon, whatever it is, you have to leave it there. You have to leave it there. If some of the wheat, you used your scythe, you cut them down, and you left a few grains there and you moved on, you're not allowed to go back. You're not allowed to go back and say, I forgot them. Whatever you forgot is to be left for the poor. They can come afterward, at the end of the day, after your workers have been through the field, and they go collect 1 stalk here, 2 stalks there, and they collect, and that's another type of in-kind gift to the poor. Shichecha. Peah, number 1. Shichecha, number 2. Exactly. That's right. So usually it's not practical. The poor people don't hang out near the field waiting to see when they're doing the harvest. Right? Nowadays, I think Israel's economy, only 3% is from farming. Right? Nowadays, maybe you should have poor people waiting around the high-tech offices and picking up the chips, not potato chips, silicon chips. That should be, but no. So you're right, it's not practical today, and therefore, usually it's not even given. It's not even, poor people don't, it's not practical. But I'm telling you the Torah's list of agricultural mitzvot. Number 3 is leket. Leket is collecting the individual stalks. Shichecha is more about sheaves, which you bundled together. You have to leave if you left 1 or 2 of them. And leket is collecting individual stalks. You have to leave that for the poor. Or if you have a few grapes that are left when you're harvesting your grapes off the vine, you have to leave them. We're going to talk about that. There's a special word for the grapes. It's called peret. Leket and peret are the same thing. Leket is with grains, and peret is with grapes, if you have an individual grape left. And there's another type of gift for grapes that's called olelot. Olelot are tiny little grapes which you don't care about. You have to leave them for the poor. They're not they're sort of like not fully ripe. Those are called olelot. So we have 5 gifts in kind, in the field, that you have to leave for the poor. Absolutely correct. Pinchas was saying that nowadays, very impractical, pretty much. Most farmers don't give, and they don't have to give them to the poor. Some farmers give the equivalent. Now, when I said that there's no measurement of the payah, that's biblically. The rabbis came along and said, yes, for what the average should be, what the average person should be giving. And that amount, many farmers do give in money. They give money to the poor. They give support to the poor based on that amount. But it's not a full obligation because the society has changed so much. But we still have to think of other ways to give gifts to the poor, to make sure we support the poor, because this was pretty much a major type of tzedakah which the Torah commanded us to do. Anyways, that's mitzvah number 4. Okay? So we had Chadash, Orla, Kilayim, and now gifts to the poor. We're up to 5. Number 5. Let's see what we have time for. Yes, Binyamin. Do you had a question? No? You were raising your hand? You forgot what you were going to ask.
No,
Oh, yeah.
I didn't.
You do remember, okay?
The tzedakah that you give every day, you here and there.
Credit card?
No.
What did you say? I couldn't hear what you said. Tzedakah, yes.
That
tzedakah.
we give.
You give a few coins here and there, yeah. It's a big mitzvah. It's very nice.
Can you intentionally give this with a substitution of the agriculture?
Sure. You can think about it. I don't have a field. I'm not giving to the poor in my field, so I'll give it in money. Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but you don't have to, and it's not exactly one-to-one.
No.
But definitely we have to give tzedakah. We'll talk about tzedakah for money another time. But these particular agricultural gifts, that's mitzvah number 4. You could say category number 4. Yeah.
If I give something, for example, the ball or support, can count the money.
You don't understand the question?
即係我意思係咧，如果我俾一啲嘢嗰啲窮人，即係俾啲物品啊，可唔可以慳翻到即係當慳係錢，即係慳翻落嗰個錢度，當嗰個嘅11。
Or you're saying you give something to other people, and can the thing consider like the 10% to the poor? That's what he's asking.
So first of all, we haven't mentioned 10% to the poor. Don't say 10%. Don't say those words, because we're going to talk about them, and specifically with their proper meaning. But the concept of giving tzedakah to the poor, it's a good question who's considered poor. We should be giving tzedakah, but the Torah's definitions, the laws of agriculture, we went through the 5 categories. Biblically, they have no measurement, and that's why it makes it easier for us to say nowadays that we don't really give them. The farmers are not expecting them. It's not going to be helpful. The farmer is going to waste so much time getting to the field. They don't live near the field, that it's not worth his, to pick up a few stalks of grain. What's he going to do? So we do give tzedakah instead of the agricultural gifts, but not specifically a certain amount. We'll talk about the amounts of tzedakah another time. We're talking about the food now. The food. So what makes food not kosher? So if you have a field which you didn't give a payah from, I believe the food is prohibited, if I'm not mistaken.
So this would be another, buying from Arabs would be a risk because they might not.
Yeah, but nobody does, even Jews. It's just not practical nowadays to give off these types of gifts, the leftover harvest and stuff like that. So that doesn't really, that's not a problem with the Arab produce either. But these are the mitzvot of the Torah, and we study them, and they have tremendous spiritual power. The specific definitions of how it worked, and of course we can learn from that many principles which we can apply today. But it's just not worth it for the poor people to go and badger the farmers. Very, very rare. Very rare that you have somebody who lives right next to. Sometimes it could be you have a poor person who lives near a vineyard. Okay, and grapes can be expensive, and he can wait and then go gather some grapes. It could be practical, but it's quite rare. Okay, next category, the seventh mitzvah, right? No, it's the fifth. No.
How you call it?
I didn't say it. This is a category called tithes. Tithes. Tithing. The word tithe in English means a portion of your food stuff that you have to separate off and give to someone else. It's not to the poor, right? We had gifts to the poor beforehand. We'll see that some of them are to the poor, but it's not primarily to the poor. It's gifts that must be separated from the produce. And this is a big, big category. Tithes. We're going to, in this book, tithes include 4 or 5 chapters.
Do it also on Purim, right? You give 2 meals? Is it different?
It's different. This is only for agricultural produce. Tithing we're talking about now is from agricultural produce, from your field. And some of them, if you don't give off the tithe, the food's not kosher. And so a lot of the job, I was once a mashgiach, supervisor, kosher supervisor, and one of my job of a supermarket. My job was to every morning go to the when they received their produce from the wholesaler, I would take off these tithes. There's a specific amount, specific order, something you're supposed to say. You say a bracha. So taking off tithes is the general category. We're going to talk about it in some depth so that you understand what they are. You can do it yourself. I'm going to teach you how to do it yourself. So if you buy produce from the side of a farmer on a stand on the side of the road, if you're sure that there's no problem of orla, okay, you've checked that there's not a very significant amount of young fruit trees of this kind, so you don't have to worry about orla. We follow the majority, and there's no even significant minority of orla. The only thing you have to worry about is that this fruit has not been tithed, usually, unless it's a religious farmer. Then he'll sell it to you and say, I already did this tithing process. But the tithing process can be done at home. And I do it at home. Why? Why do I do it at home? To make sure it's kosher. Yes, some people do. Even when they buy in the supermarket, and the supermarket has kosher supervision. They do it at home just to be sure. But I don't do that. I do it at home. Why?
It's a mitzvah.
It's a mitzvah. Good. But I want my food to be kosher. Well, but there's a rabbi at the supermarket who does it. So why do I have to do it? I don't do it when I buy in the supermarket. When do I do it? When I go to my garden. I grow lettuce, and I grow onions, and I have fruit trees, and I take them home and I eat them. They're not kosher. There's a word for non-kosher produce which has not yet been tithed. There's a word for it. It's called tevel. Tet bet lamed. T-E-V-E-L. Tevel. Tevel is untithed produce. It's forbidden to eat. It's not kosher. As I said, when you're living in Hong Kong, you're living in Toronto, you're living in Wyoming, most of the fruits didn't grow in the land of Israel. You don't have to worry about tevel. Kosher, you think kosher? Okay, it's got to be a kosher animal, kosher fish, it's got to be shechted the right way, no milk and meat. That's what kosher means. We live in a new reality. We're back in the land of Israel. Big part of keeping kosher in the land of Israel is to not eat tevel, untithed produce. So I can teach you. Most supermarkets, most places you buy fruits and vegetables in Israel, kashrut supervision is on a very high level. They've been tithed, maybe more than once, to be sure. But if you have a garden, you have a friend who has a garden and he gives you, hey, let me share with you some of my peaches. They just came off my tree. You have to ask, have they been tithed or not? Besides the earlier issues we said of Orla, Chadash, Kilayim, assume that their trees are not grafted and they haven't planted the other species together. Usually those are not such a big problem. What about tithing? Not everybody knows about how to tithe. You're going to know. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to teach you. We're going to practice. I do it at home. It's not complicated. It's not too hard. But it's a general category. It includes a lot of pieces. We do them all together. It's not hard, but there's a lot of different pieces. It's very similar to the previous category. What was the previous category? Gifts to the poor, but it was in-kind gifts to the poor, right? So here we have in-kind gifts, but not to the poor. Some of them is to the poor, we'll see. But they have to be gifts in kind from the produce. You have to separate off those tithes. We said, you know already, Kohen, Levi, and so forth. But they have to be separated or the food is not kosher. The food is called, what's it called? Food that's produce which has not been tithed? Tevel. Good, tevel.
It's another word for treif.
Treif is usually used for non-kosher meat products. And this is for non-kosher vegetable products. Vegetable products is tevel. It's,
Time to time appears in my door a bag full of vegetables.
That's lovely.
And no name, don't see any people.
Wow. So how do you know it's kosher? Has it been tithed? Maybe it's tevel. So you're going to learn here. You can do it yourself. You can make it kosher.
Some girls that go to school around.
It's very nice of them. Yeah, it could be. Also, they have in Jerusalem, the municipality has a list of people that are alone. Maybe you're on somebody's list, and they know, here's a guy who lives by himself. We give him food packages once in a while. Elderly, sometimes so maybe that's where it comes from. But still, if it doesn't have any note, if you can't eat it, you don't know if it's been tithed. But I'll teach you. You can take off the tithes yourself.
What you do with the tithes?
I'm going to teach you. Okay? There's different types, each type. What you do with it, what we did with it in the temple times, what we do with it now. But it's a very practical law. If you have, right, so what the Binyamin is speaking about, a food package which he gets, that's doubtful. We don't know if it's been tithed or not. When I take from my garden, I make a bracha. I know for sure nobody else has tithed it. I'm the owner. I picked it myself. So I make a bracha and I take off the tithes. So it's a general category. It includes a few different types. We're going to study about them. Okay, other questions about that? If for Binyamin, I'm going to teach you how to do it, but I would not say a bracha. Probably they're giving you kosher food. Most people in Jerusalem, even the municipality, or they probably bought it at a supermarket, which was already kosher, right? It's been supervised by a rabbi. So most of the fruits and vegetables that you get in the local and the supermarkets, most of them have already been tithed. But if you don't know, it's doubtful tevel. So you have to separate off the tithes without a bracha. Because it's doubtful, we don't make a bracha. and then it's kosher for sure. Okay? Should we get into it? I'll start. We have a few minutes. Let's make, because I was a little late today, I apologize for the traffic and everything. We spread ourselves a little thin. When it comes to the laws of tithes, we have a new timing. Up till now, we mentioned two types of timing. We've mentioned the time of year, right, the 16th of Nisan when it comes to grain, the new grain, versus Chadash and Yashan. And then we talked about a cycle of 3 and 4 years when it comes to Orla and Ravai. And that starts when you plant the tree, and it ends Tu B'Shvat after the 3rd year or the 4th year. Now we have a new timing system for these laws of tithes. The timing system is a 7-year cycle. 7-year cycle. That the entire Jewish people have. We have a tradition. We keep a 7-year cycle. In the times of the temple, the 7-year cycle worked a little bit differently. And that's why most people assume that the mitzvah we have today, the tithing we're doing today, is not biblical, but rabbinic. And the difference happened after the Jewish people were exiled. The original system was designed for the Jewish people living in their land, every tribe in its place, temple service in Jerusalem, run by the Kohanim and the Levim. So all these tithes are given to support that system. Now we don't have that system, but we still keep a cycle of 7 years. Every 7th year, as you know, is the Shemitah year, which all the produce becomes ownerless, and we don't cultivate the land. We'll talk about Shemitah separately. That's another issue. But we need to just to mention it here because the tithes run in a cycle of 7 years. You're going to have different tithes for different years of the cycle. Okay? So just like you have to know what day of the week it is, you have to know what year of the Shemitah cycle it is. Do you have to know what day of the week it is? Who cares?
Yes.
Why do you have to know what day of the week it is?
We need to count for the Shabbat.
You need to count up towards the Shabbat. You're right. And you have to know which class is on which day, which song of the day to say in your prayers, the song of the Levites, right?
Yes.
Other than that, some people's days look exactly the same. Monday is the same as Tuesday, is the same as Wednesday. Monday and Thursday we read from the Torah. So you have to know. But when it comes to the years of the Shemitah cycle, you have to know about it not only because of the 7th year of the Shemitah cycle. 7th year Shemitah, you have to know that very big changes when it comes to the kosher of produce. Vegetable produce that grows in the ground. But the 6 years too, the 6 years leading up to the Shemitah, each year has its own laws. Primarily there's two types. There's two types of years. There's years 1, 2, 4, and 5, and then there's year 3 and 6. Okay, so the cycle works, cycle of 7 years, and we're going to start with this tomorrow. And we're going to teach you all about the different tithes, which you have to take off on these year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. As I said, there's 3 categories. Year 7, and then years 1, 2, 4, 5 as category number 2, and then year 3 and 6 are special. So as you see that basically the cycle of 7 gets divided into 2. The cycle of 6 years. The 7th year is its own, and then you have 2 cycles of 3, right? 1, 2, and then 3 is special, and then 4, 5, and 6 is special. So we have sort of mini cycles within the Shemitah cycle, 2 cycles of 3 years each. We'll get into it tomorrow, more details about the tithing, okay? We'll stop here and proceed. Bevakasha.